In the world, there are people who are destined to attract attention, and people who don't. They are the second group, with an ordinary life, always fantasizing about being someone else until one day they are transported to a magical world with a very unique power, but the horizon. It darkens when he finds out what his true mission is, to face the Demon King. Come with me to see how this story develops. Suzune Inokami, the president of the student council, and Kazuki, president of the student council, are two teenagers who attract the attention of everyone in the world halls of the high school, and that many admire them as the most beautiful couple in the place. That is not the case of our father named Ken Yuzado, an ordinary student who goes unnoticed all the time. Although he is not unhappy with his life, he always wanted to have an extraordinary and fantastic life, just like me, so subscribe right now so it can be like that. One day, a strong storm breaks out while Yuzado is in the test, and when he goes to the place where everyone leaves their umbrellas, he realizes that someone has brought his own by mistake. For a few seconds, he profits from using an umbrella that is in the place but decides that it would be immoral and that it would cause problems for someone who is not to blame. So he will wait inside the building until the rain stops. For a long time, the rain only gets worse, and our pra begins to get impatient because he will never be able to get out if he continues like this. Then an umaki appears behind him, who kindly tells him to find a way to get out of there. Although it will not be well received that the advice forces a student to go out in the rain, seconds later, he also appears. Kazuki takes the umbrella that Yuzado had planned to steal, and offers Yuzado his emergency umbrella, claiming that he knows him because they are classmates. Yuzado is surprised to learn that someone is popular as he recognizes him and remembers his name, but is even more surprised when both student counselors offer him to walk home together. He thinks everyone at school would invite him for walking back with the two most popular in the school, and he can't believe that this is really happening on the road. Yuzado confesses to them that he thought they were more inaccessible, which makes the two boys laugh. Although they understand that it is the image that everyone, then our friend asks them directly if they are a couple, and they say that although they all believe that it is, they are not. They only spend a lot of time together on council issues. Then they only praise us for asking that directly instead of talking to their friends or back like everyone else later. Inokami asks us Yuzado if he already knows what she wants to do when she finishes high school, and Yuzado admits that she hasn't thought about it. Kazuki remembers that she asked him the same question that day, and she responds that she just wants to know the answers from others because she still doesn't know what to do despite being in third year, and that was me, so I don't blame him. Then below he comments that sometimes he feels that he is in a place that is not where he should be and understands that feeling because it is one that constantly stalks him. As they walk, the cables wet from the rain begin to spark, and they begin to feel bells around them that increase in volume with every second, which worries the three boys. When they approach each other to protect themselves, a kind of magic circle that comes from the floor surrounds them, and Yuzado wonders out loud if it is a portal to another world, even though Kazuki judges him for saying something like that. Inokami gets excited, and with his eyes, he asks Yuzado if he thinks it will be a world of magic and monsters. Our child is surprised that the most popular girl in high school likes those things. Later, they wake up in a long hallway of an incredible castle and don't understand anything. Only they are totally enchanted because they have clearly gone to end up in a different world. But the two boys do not know what to do, so the king who is in front of them introduces himself as Lloydville Gaslinger, the king of Linger, and confesses to them that he summoned them to that place to turn them into heroes since 2 years ago. Back, the Demon King of that world attacked them. At that time, they managed to make him retreat and save the kingdom, but those last 2 years, the Dark Lord was gathering and strengthening his army, and the people of the kingdom do not know what will become of them. That is why they need help. Although Inokami is totally excited about this new adventure, Kazuki does not feel the same, and when the king finishes speaking, he angrily assures him that they do not want to be his heroes. Kazuki is angry because he has summoned them to that place without his permission and because they have been away from their families and their real lives. So he orders him to return them to their world. However, The king states that this is not possible because the magic circle only works in one sense. It can take people from other countries to Linger, but not the other way around. Faced with Kazuki's anger, the guards begin to threaten them with their weapons, and our plots calm down their friend. The king promises them that after they help him, he will find a way to take them back to their original world. Only he asks me why he calls them heroes and they have not done anything special. The king's assistant explains that the magic circle for summoning heroes selects outstanding people. He also adds that bells were heard when they were summoned, which means that they are heroes. However, at the moment that happened, the two advisors heard the bells chimes but no prawn no, and he only approached them out of fear for what they were saying, which in short means that our protagonist is not a hero and is there by mistake. The magician Wall then decides to test his ability with magic with a crystal ball. The first is Inakami, who discovers at that moment that she has lightning magic and a large amount of mana, which makes her too happy. Then it is Kazuki's turn, who discovers that she gives you the magic of light, a magic that very few people have, and that is what can confront evil. So it is a very useful power against demons. Then it is our brother's turn. When he places his hands in the crystal ball, it turns into an emerald green color that makes your hair stand out. The tip to the magician. Then she takes him by the arm and takes him running quickly to the king. When he finds out what happened, everyone goes into crisis, but no one tells Osato what is happening. The king decides to send Yuzuru to a place safe away from the castle before a certain person appears. Although his plans are ruined because then Rose, the captain of the kingdom's rescue team, enters through the door asking about the summoning ritual and terrifies everyone present. The king convinces Rose that the boy is there by mistake and the heroes are the other two. But our father asks what his magic green color means and catches Rose's attention. The king orders the magician to take our protagonist away from Rose, and she encloses him in a bubble, quickly removing him of the castle, but Rose's power is indescribable, and she manages to free him and take him with her, promising that she will make him a great healing magician. Rose takes Yuzuru away from the city on the outskirts along with the rest of the rescue team, since the healing magic very few people have it and Rose wants to train him to improve him. However, his training is a little orthodox, and all his subordinates behave like fearsome soldiers. Rose explains to him that in the rescue team, there are only 2 more people with that type of magic and that they are there for the moment, and the next day he will begin his training with her as his personal trainer. Yuzuru is totally terrified and doesn't know what awaits him. After the first night, Yuzuru wakes up dreaming about everything that happened but gets depressed when he knows that everything is real. Despite that, he decides that he will make an effort to be useful at least once in a while. Before breakfast, he arrives to visit his friends, and they are happy to see him alive and well. Yuzuru tells them that that day he begins his infernal training with Rose. Kazuki tells him that, thanks to the fact that Yuzuru and Inumaki are so optimistic, he has also decided to train and live his life as a hero in that world. After catching up and seeing that everyone is fine, the counselors leave. Yuzuru thanks Rose for allowing him to meet with his friends and comments that this is not a prison, so he can leave whenever he wants. He wants as long as he is not training. Then he gives him a diary and tells him that there he must write his daily workouts and what he thinks about it. After this, breakfast and the infernal training begin. The first part of the training consists of making our plot feel the mana of his own body by joining his hands on his chest. Yuzuru quickly feels the flow of mana, and Rose tells him that what he has to do is be able to extract the mana, something that he does not understand. Later, Rose brings in a giant book and reads it. He orders him to read it, but Yuzuru is sure that he will not be able to read in the language of that world. However, when he opens it, he manages to understand the language, and Rose explains that the summoned beings arrive with a translation spell applied, so our protagonist begins to read about the kingdom, about reaching the kingdom of demons, and all the history and the existing races and so on. The second and third day of training basically focus on running until you can't take it anymore. Although when our protagonist can't take it anymore and falls exhausted to the ground, Rose manages to heal the exhaustion of his muscles and forces him to continue. On the fourth day, finally, Yuzuru joins the training of the others, although he is clearly behind in comparison to his companions. The 5th and 6th day he only continues running, with a particularity that the 6th day falls on the mud and for the first time a green healing light begins to emerge from his hand, although he does nothing more than that. The following days are based on running while hitting himself and hating Rose for being insensitive while writing insults in his training journal. On the 10th day, he manages to use the healing power voluntarily. In addition to the fact that he no longer gets tired when running, however, he wondered if he will be of any help to his friends if all he does is run. Then he adds push-ups to his training while he reaches 1,000. Rose explains that the physical training is so strict to be able to flee from the enemy on the battlefield, but also to be able to save his companions, since the faster he runs on the battlefield, the faster he can go to save them. This reassures our protagonist, who understands why his training. The following days he continues running, exercising with more and more weight, and doing push-ups. One day he has an altercation with one of his teammates who decides to eat his lunch. That our protagonist gets so excited that he chases him all over the field. After about 20 or 25 days of training, Inakami and Kazuki decide to visit their friend. And then I was surprised to find the poor and skinny Yuzado that they knew turned into an incredibly muscular young man who manages to lift 2 large blocks of stone with Rose on top of him while he heals himself in the process. Rose begins to be satisfied with the fruits of her efforts and assures that she will be able to bring Yuzado to the battlefield sooner than expected. However, the knight who accompanies the counselors becomes incredibly angry and reproaches Rose, since he considers that such strict training is capable of destroying a young man with a bright future. But Rose does not back down, and with a completely honest attitude, the diva tells him that she does not care about his chivalric ideals, but she performs training in another way. He also adds that his goal is to make the protagonist his right hand, since he advances quickly with training and is not willing to lose and demands more of himself every day. So he is surprised by this because he did not know about his semi's plans. And he is not very happy with the news either, since being his right-hand man must be equally or worse than being his student. The confrontation between the knight and Rose comes to nothing, and Rose orders him to calm down and eat something so they can meet with his friends, who are there watching open mouths while they eat something. The counselors tell him that Cyrus is the most important knight in the kingdom and that he himself is giving fencing classes as training. In turn, the girl who meets them introduces herself as Cilia Linger, the princess of the Kazuki kingdom, tells him that although their training is hard, the magician and the knight prioritize their health and teach them magic and fencing. Yuzado calmly responds that is normal, but that Rose is a beast, and in fact, the training what they saw that day was something light for what he is used to. So Inakami observes our brother's muscular arms and rushes towards him, delighted with our brother's new body, who regrets our brother's harsh training conditions, but he reassures him that at first he did want to run away because he had a very bad time, but now that is behind him despite the hard training to which he has become accustomed. Life there is good. He has made friends with his companions and they enjoy exquisite banquets every day. Then one of her companions appears, the bald man who stole her lunch that time to take her soul under the tree. Yuzado suddenly changes his attitude completely and becomes a violent beast that begins to fight hard with the bald man. The princess gets worried, thinking that she must intervene, but his friends realize that this is our brother's new life and what he is used to. In addition, he heals while he fights, so there is no risk. Then those from the castle leave Yuzado and the bald man alone. Calm down is a saying because the fighting has escalated strongly. That night our plot is happy to have seen his friends. The next day Rose tells our protagonist that day they will finally go out so that he can see the outside world. After terrorizing the guards, Rose and Yuzado manage to leave the kingdom, and Rose shows him a large forest called the Darkness of Linger, famous for being full of Luo demons, to give him a bag with food and things to survive. I guess because it doesn't really show anything, Rose leaves him in the forest and tells him that he cannot return home until he has married a big grizzly. Yuzado and everyone gets scared. After reading the entire book about the history of the species in that world, he knows that the blue grizzlies are very dangerous and turn into grizzlies after living 100 years. So you count them. Rose claims that she should be able to kill one of them easily, but our plot is in crisis. Well, the training was nothing more than running, and in reality she doesn't know how to fight, But since Rose's methods are always so much controversy, instead of calming him down or something, grabs him by the queue and with great force throws him into the forest very far from where they were at the beginning. After Rose's super strong throw, he hits them at high speeds into the dark forest, and as he falls he begins to think, how would the death of a young man at the hand of his training teacher be shared in the newspapers? However, he comes to the conclusion that he does not want to die and uses all his healing power, covering every centimeter of his body so as not to be harmed by the impact on the ground or from the different scratches from the branches of the trees. Using his power added to great dexterity to fall correctly on the ground, he managed to significantly reduce the damage and continue with his mission. Basically, if he had not done all of that, he would have been dead. Now, but that is not the case. Then he heals his wounds and, angry with Rose's training methods, begins to walk in the forest to look for the monster he must defeat, even though he tries to convince himself that he can do it. Yuzuru is afraid. Well, it is a monster. A met bear much more powerful than him. However, he can begin to plan a strategy to fight him when he encounters him. Or that's what he thought, because behind him appears the Grand Grizzly, a gigantic and rabid white bear with a body and face full of scars, who begins to chase Monkey's Mert. Oh no! Who begins to chase him fiercely. Yuzuru decides at that moment that after so much time of training focused on running, the bear will not be able to catch up with him, but when he turns around he notices that the bear is on his heels. Tired of her, he decides to face it. After all, he couldn't be worse than Rose, but when he decides to stop to fight the bear, two other smaller blue grizzly bears appear. Equally furious, they join the great grizzly, and Yuzuru recognizes that he won't be able to defeat them and resumes his life. He thinks he will be trapped. He hears the sound of running water and understands that this is his way out. So he jumps over a large waterfall, leaving behind the bears, who look at him angry but turn back to the forest. Later, he opens the bag that he gave him. Rose gave him, and he recounts emergency rations, a canteen, and a knife, and he regrets that he didn't give him anything to light a fire, but he ends up putting that idea aside and eats one of the rations and goes to sleep. The next day, Yuzuru decides to go around the forest to know the space and also his enemy, while leaving marks on all the trees so as not to get lost, more or less like we do in Minecraft of putting torches in the caves. And then he hears a noise and gets into an attack position, but then he notices that it is a monster in the shape of a small rabbit that has injured its paw. Using its healing powers, he cures the bunny and then prepares to continue with its search. However, the bunny follows it everywhere, which worries our protagonist because he will clearly be the first victim in the bear's claws. When the rabbit asks him if he knows where the grizzly is, he seems to understand. He guides him through the forest to the bear's den, where he sees that the two blue grizzly are also there and they look like a Yuzuru family. He decides not to attack even though they are asleep and continue with their investigation of the environment. The next day, just observing the dosos without doing anything, but ends up poisoning themselves by drinking water from the forest, and not even their healing Maya can quickly heal the rabbit. The next day, he points out a small lagoon with crystal clear water, and when he drinks, our protagonist realizes that it is drinking water. So he begins to drink from there while he is in the forest. The rabbit gets scared, he starts to tremble, and climbs a tree. Our protagonist is surprised to see this because the rabbit is not even scared of bears. So it must be something much worse. Following his instinct, he also climbs the tree. From the heights, he can see how an incredibly giant snake with a great thirst for blood begins to travel through the tree. Yuzuru does not remember having read about it in the book, but it is clear that it is dangerous. 4 days after the first sighting of the snake, Yuzuru is still worried because he does not want to spend much more time in the forest with that specimen. During those days, he only dedicates himself to observe the bears and even began to generate affection for him, but he can no longer continue with that. Well, he must leave the forest. The rabbit tries to prevent him from killing the bears, but our protagonist has no other option. When he has finally decided to annihilate them and takes his knife and approaches to the burrow to find that the grizzly and his wife have been killed by what appears to be the snake giant. Yuzuru is enraged to learn that the snake eliminated them for pure pleasure, since he left their bodies there without eating or anything. For what he hates most at that moment is seeing the baby bear cry that had managed to hide while his parents were killed. Just for that reason, Yuzuru decides that he will avenge the bears and kill the snake. After 10 days of being in the forest, the counselors approach the house and worry when they find out about our brother's mission while Yuzuru continues in the forest training and building spears to face the snake. On the 10th, he arrives and asks the bunny to take him to where the snake is. When he arrives in front of it, he saddens. Well, he sees that the Senno have gone to confront the snake to avenge their parents, but he has been severely injured. Our protagonist does not allow any more time to pass and approaches the snake to stick the spear in its eye, leaving me on his right side. He decides to go that way to stab his knife and defeat it quickly, but the snake manages to move agilely and ends up eating our plot's arm. However, he has the knife in that hand, so while he cares for his own body, he also stabs the knife into her. The internal part of the snake's mouth, leaving it damaged. He manages to move away, but his vision begins to blur due to the poison. However, it takes a few seconds to heal from the poison and attacks again. Although he is weakened when the snake's tail is about to hit him, Yuzuru does not decide to help him. And using all his strength he stops the snake's tail, which allows Yuzuru to attack it directly in the head. Then he gives it a very powerful punch in the good eye that manages to break the skull. The snake ends up on the ground. He is happy to defeat the snake and the poison befriends him but cannot heal his wounds because he uses all his healing power to neutralize the poison. Then from the ground and already without strength, he observes how the snake rises again from the ground ready to attack. When our daughter is about to die, shouting curses to Rose from the four winds. Well, all of that is her fault. At that moment, Rose falls from the sky, hitting the snake and finally leaving it lifeless. Rose tells her that she arrived at the right time because the bunny gave her a warning. And then he confesses that the bunny is his pet and was sent specifically to take care of our sprouts and warn him about anything. Although Rose intends to intervene as little as necessary, however, she also confesses that she sent him to that place because she never believed that a monster like that snake could appear in the forest, and she comments that it is a monster created specifically by the Dark Lord's army. Not even the Hare Cilia managed to kill it in the last invasion. She comments in surprise that she never thought that the snake could kill GR Grizzly since in an elite army can against them, or this last hedge is horrified because he cannot believe that he sent a rookie like him to defeat a monster that not even the elites can defeat. So Ross explains that the objective was not for him to defeat it, but rather for gain experience by fighting against something strong. Although when she sees that he is stronger than she thought, she lets him continue for a long time while he fought with the snake. The orphaned Esno takes a liking to our Yuzuru and returns with them to the kingdom more peacefully. Rose explains to our Prada that after that mission, he is approved and has shown that he is capable of being at her side on the battlefield. Even though he lacks the basics, he has many other things, such as a strong body, physical abilities, etc. that enable him to that role. The other two healers of the typical team cannot earn the distinction. They need someone like him because they will soon have to face the Dark Army in the Dark Kingdom. Amelia Vergit, the commander of the Third Army, notifies the Demon King that the preparations are ready to begin the attack. Yuzuru finds out through Rose that the war with the Dark Kingdom will soon begin, and he will be on the front, healing the wounded. Yuzuru considers that he is not capable of being too useful, but the other two healers have other roles and the only one who can. He is the one to occupy that position, so he decides to take advantage of the little time left to train and strengthen himself as quickly as possible in the Dark Kingdom. Commander Amelia runs into the demonic doctor who tells her that he has finished the prototype of the monster. Even though Amelia hates the doctor and decides to go with him to see the monster in the laboratory. The doctor shows Amelia a giant white snake, just like the one our brother had to face. Only much more powerful than the previous one. Because it will not be injured as easily in battle as the other. Amelia hopes this is the case because on the battlefield, there will be people who will be much more problematic than the Zilli's Knight. It is about the kidnapping soldiers who have stayed on the battlefield but do not fight. So they take the wounded first that they can realize and minimize the number of fallen among their ranks. The one who commands these people is Rose, who they deeply hate in the Dark Kingdom for causing them so much inconvenience. However, since Emilia is the commander, she cannot be part of the battlefield. But that is noted as a problem because she has already decided that she was the Black Knight, the immortal magician of darkness. Meanwhile, Yuzuru enjoys sleeping in a bed again and eating real food. The next day, she approaches the Senno to feed him and then enjoy with him for a while and give him a loving man. Rose tells him that the king is allowed to be the property of the team, that is, he has to earn his bread. Rose's work is not basically about being a burden for our protagonist, who must carry him in her room. Route to strengthen resistance while running. However, today's training is different. While our boy carries the bear, Rose tells him that he must go faster than ever. If the bear were not injured, he would not be able to resist so long, plus his teammates. They begin to attack and chase him to simulate being on a battlefield, since that will be the role that a kidnapper will occupy in the war. The training lasts 5 hours of dodging poisonous attacks and launches and so on while he carries the Senno on his shoulders at the end. He is destroyed and becomes depressed. Well, he thought that his resistance would last at least half a day. Rose explains that those 5 hours are what he would last on the battlefield. Well, nerves, fear, and impatience exhaust energy quickly. Our protagonist asks how to improve that, and Rose hostilely tells him that he must acquire mental strength and not let himself be overcome by fear. After recovering his mana, Rose sends him running throughout the entire city with the SS on his shoulders. He is not surprised that despite having a monster on his shoulders, with his back turned, people are not scared, so a lady from the city explains to him that the members of the rescue force are much more terrifying when they run by, so they are used to it. While our plot leaves, a fox girl wonders about him as she watches him walk away. Yuzuru decides to go visit his friends in the castle, but on the way, a blonde man begins to follow him and call him. However, the protagonist hears him late when the blonde has already fallen and hurt himself. Later, Yuzuru finds out that the blonde is one of the healers of the rescue group that is in the city because Yena is a clinic where they cure people. Also tells him that he and his sister, the other senator, could never keep up with him like our brother does. He tells him that in battle they are a support team, that is, they are in the rear and heal the wounded that the rest of the rescue team takes to them. For this reason, he is surprised to know that our prota has been chosen to be with Rose. Noticing that the boy is afraid, the blonde reassures him by saying that Rose would never choose someone to go with her if she didn't fully trust his abilities. He also comments that heroes are always at the forefront and are the first to be hurt, which makes him think no sprot about his friends and that he wants to be with them in the vanguard to help them finally. Yuzuru heads to the castle and is surprised that everyone trusts Rose enough to leave him with the Senno. Once inside, he observes the training of Inakami, and when she sees that her hands are hurt by the grimaces, she quickly heals them. Inakami blushes, and in what seems to be a romantic moment, she asks him if she went there to see her, but our protagonist does not notice and sincerely admits that he went to see her at Shi and also Kazuki, which bothers Inukami a little, who doesn't get the hint anyway after trying to caress the Senno. And don't let Inukami tell him that Kazuki isn't in the castle that day because he went out with sillies and the rest to fight monsters to gain experience. When he returns, Inukami will be able to go out to gain experience in the forest. Seely tells Kazuki about the soon beginning of the war. Yasuki is fearful, but upon learning that all the soldiers trust and have the highest morale high with the heroes at his side, he decides that he will give his best to be able to help in battle. Then they come across a pack of demonic wolves that they must bravely face. When the sunset begins, Yuzuru returns to the rescue team's house and tells Rose when he survived the snake, he realized that he could not kill or fight with anyone. That's why he was afraid to talk about war and the battlefield. However, that day, when he saw that his friends were training hard, he realized that he wanted to be on the battlefield supporting and saving her, everyone he didn't need. Rose gives him a motivational speech, and for the first time he really feels part of the rescue team. The next day, Yuzuru wakes him up with a heavy bag and a new message from the king. He wants him to accompany Inakami in his training, and that's how the anime ends for now, since they are in premiere. So if you liked it, remember that you can subscribe, leave your like. You already know we will be seeing each other soon. Until next time, bye.